Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, your home for heavy strategy, awesome theme, and everything in between. Check us out along with other great podcasts at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night Preview Series, Episode 19, Tiny Epic Zombies with Michael Coe and Scott Almes. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Every Night is Game Night podcast. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. And yes, surprise, that is Eric Summerer that you heard in the intro here. We are now part of the Dice Tower Network. This is not our regular show. This is our special preview series. We're not going to talk a lot about the introduction to the Dice Tower here. We're going to save that for Friday. Please listen on Friday's episode. Today, it's all about the sell. And we've brought in two gentlemen who are in the middle of the sell right now as we speak. So for our Dice Tower debut, I would like to welcome on the creators of the Tiny Epic Zombies Kickstarter live right now, Michael Coe from Gameland Games and game designer Scott Almes. Welcome back to the show.
All right, thank you very much. I wasn't sure if Scott was going to talk first. I was trying to be polite, but appreciate you having me.
You can lead us off, Mike.
All right.
No, we're really happy to be here, though.
All right. So, you guys, you were on episode 51, giving us the big sweep of Tiny Epic everything. Really cool interview. Please go back and check out that interview. You guys are pretty honest about, Tiny Epic and, the ups and the downs and, Quest and Galaxies and all that kind of stuff. This time we're just talking about Tiny Epic Zombies. You guys are pushing it. We're more than happy to kind of get the word out there. The point of this preview series is not just to kind of obviously, yes, to sell, but to really get into it and ask you guys some of the questions that appear on the comments, on BGG, reasons why people might be on the fence about backing. I wanted to go out and collect as many of those questions that I can so that people listen and then they can make a final decision about whether they want to back or not. So I have some questions here. I'm going to have this like a kind of a half AMA from people from Reddit and from Facebook. So I got some questions and I got some questions of my own. So we are going to hit it. But for people who are not familiar with Tiny Epic, maybe just go over very briefly, both of you guys' perspectives on what the whole Tiny Epic thing is and what you hope to bring to the gaming community.
Yeah, absolutely. So Scott is the designer of the entire series, and as a lot of people know, as a lot of Scott's fans know for sure, he has a real knack for designing approachable games that have really robust strategies and engines, and so people are able to pick up the game. They don't have to read a textbook. They can get right into it, and then the strategy unfolds in the layers of the game and the options that you have, but not in a super complex engine. So we're very fortunate to be teamed up with Scott Almes to make the Tiny Epic series, which essentially focuses on that. It's all about approachable games that have a lot of replayability, that have a lot of strategy, that feel like a big box game, but the tiny part is that we condense it down into a travel-sized box that, depending on the kind of jeans you wear, I can fit a box in my pocket, but a lot of people have challenged me on that and says that they can't fit it in their pocket. So
cargo pants,
so
that's the key, that. Cargo pants.
But either way, you can definitely put it in a small bag or a purse, or if you've got a game bag, you can fit the whole series in your game bag. But they play fast. They're 30 to 45 minutes, certainly no longer than an hour. And they cover a lot of range of players, a lot of mechanics, genres, you name it. So really, we've got a little bit of something for anybody in this series at this point, because we've got Tiny Epic Zombies marks our sixth core title in the series, and then several of them have received expansions. So it's a really exciting time to be part of the Tiny Epic movement.
Definitely. So please go back to episode 51. Scott shares his story of designing Tiny Epic planets. I think that was the very first one, right, Scott?
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah.
which is not a game that exists right now. So if you've not heard that episode and you're a fan of the Tiny Epics, you're going to be like, what? Tiny Epic Planets? How did I miss that? No.
Yeah, you can hear about how Tiny Epic Planets turned into Tiny Epic Kingdoms and started us down this Tiny Epic path of ours.
Awesome.
Yes.
So that you actually bled right into one of my first questions. This is from Arcadian2985 from Reddit. So in Tiny Epic Zombies, will there be any new and innovative mechanics that will be too hard for my wife to understand? By which she means a person who is a casual gamer, but not really, a gamer. So in this game, we'll get into Tiny Epic Zombies in a second, but I just wanted to kind of give you, this was such a natural place to ask it of like, okay, will there be mechanics either in this game or in future games or whatever it is that are not as accessible to like the super casual gamer?
We're trying to keep it as accessible as possible. I mean, that's one of the tenets of Tiny Epic. Probably the most complicated one we have is, I don't know, maybe Tiny Epic Western. That's about as heavy as we'll probably ever go. But, I mean, we want it to be approachable. I mean, everyone's, Tiny Epic, everyone's short on time, everyone's short, doesn't have enough budget as they want, so we want something that's in a small, easy package, and, learning the rules is part of it. We want you to be able to get into it, have fun. I mean, any of our games, you could have fun, complete a game within like an hour. And that's something we're going to keep with all of them. Tiny Epic Zombies in particular has a very simple rule set. It's definitely on our easier end of getting into. The strategy's hard once you get into it, if you want to survive, Echo Ridge Mall, but not get your brains eaten out. But as far as actually getting in and playing, it's very accessible. It's possibly our most accessible one, actually.
So there you go, Arcadian2985. Not only is it your wife will be able to play it, she'll be able to play it even easier because it's one of the easiest rule sets out there. So that's very cool. Okay, so we are at the doorstep of talking about Tiny Epic Zombies. Let's walk right in. So I guess, so like you were saying before, how Michael, about how the Tiny Epic library just kind of has something for everybody. I definitely find that each game can be encapsulated by like a word or a phrase or, some kind of like gamery, jargony thing. So like Tiny Epic Kingdoms was that 4X style game. Tiny Epic Quest was like an adventure game with puzzle elements. How would you quantify Tiny Epic Zombies?
So Tiny Epic Zombies is at its core kind of a hodgepodge of mechanics. So it's an objective-based game with a lot of moving around. I mean, you're always on the run, right? The zombies are overrunning this mall, and so you got to be running around. So your actions are pretty much just move, but depending on the space that you land on, there's going to be some sub-actions that you can take, but you're pretty much always just moving around. But you have to complete these objectives. And the objectives introduce a bunch of different kinds of mechanics like pick up and deliver or hidden information, all sorts of different things. So really, to kind of narrow this one down, I would just say that it's kind of a carnival of a bunch of different mechanics, and it's got 5 play modes, which is what really makes it stand out amongst the rest. It's got competitive, cooperative, one versus all, team play, solo play. So this one's really unique. This one definitely has some stuff that we've not done in other Tiny Epic games, which makes it hard to narrow it down to one word.
Mm-hmm. You hit on 2 things that I definitely wanted to get into. The first was the goal cards. So this is unique. I think most of the Tiny Epic games require some sort of points threshold. So, Quest, you had 5 rounds to achieve X amount of points. Whoever most points wins. Galaxies, once you hit 21 points, you trigger the end game. I don't see that here. I think like you set up these different variable goals, and the goals are very in-game oriented. So it's like, discover, there's only one real exit. The rest of them are fake, and you have to run around and do stuff. Or save these people that are in some corner of the map, which the map is if you look at the videos, which I'll rely on, John Gets Games and Rado have some really great videos on here. You'll see the map, which is cards laid out in a big old tableau, the epic part of Tiny Epic. So you have to run around the map and do stuff. So, I guess, Scott, tell us a little bit about kind of approaching this kind of new area for the Tiny Epic series where it's more like this kind of scenario survival game.
Oh yeah, the scenario cards came probably from a kind of a thematic point of view first. In looking at the game, we kind of decided on the zombie theme first. So then from that point, it was, what kind of zombie game we want. And as far as having a kind of like hate the word point salad, but that's kind of tossed around for those games where you try to get a lot of points. It didn't really make sense for a zombie game. Like at the end of a zombie movie, no one's comparing, oh, well, I got, I killed this many zombies and I have got this many points over in this area and I control these areas, so I won the zombie. No, you have to survive. So, from a thematic point of view, we're like, oh, we have these people trapped in a mall. They have to do these 3 things to make it out alive. And that's kind of where the scenarios came from, is we wanted them to do actual, kind of thematic things you might see in a zombie movie or a zombie TV show, or, coming from that basis of, the genre itself. It seemed to make the most sense. And one nice side effect is it's very accessible, because as you're explaining the game, you say, well, to win, you do these 3 things. And you're not really having to wait, oh, am I going to get more points going after the helicopter? Am I going to get more points trying to help the army get inside? It's, oh, no, you have to do those 3 things to win. It's that simple. You're not... So, it really helps people get into the game that way, too.
All right, so Scott kind of jogged my mind. So if I can go back and redeem my less than stellar answer to your previous question, we can wrap up Tiny Epic Zombies by what we put on the freaking front of the box, which is that it is a brutal survival game. That's the little 2-word lingo that you can call it, a brutal survival game.
Because you're in the middle of a Kickstarter and you're the producer of it, so it's okay. That's awesome. Yeah. But a survival game, it's one of those things where, like, 4X game, you kind of know what it is, but like saying a survival game that's more open-ended, like it's so many different things. So I guess it's helpful to know, like, that there is pick up and deliver and there is all this other kind of things you're doing in here.
Yeah, we kind of sneak in those mechanics through the scenario cards. Like, you don't, at no point you're saying, oh, well, this is a pick up and deliver. This is a little bit of deduction. This is a search and rescue type thing. It's the scenarios themselves. I mean, they luckily feel very thematic, and we kind of sneak in other mechanics without you really even knowing that you're explaining something that could be a little bit more complicated to some new people. It feels very easy because it's so, you have to do this thing to win. Cool.
So I'm also grabbing this from Liz Davidson from the Beyond Solitaire blog. She actually answered the thread on Facebook. She says, speaking of something that Michael said in his opening description, that there are multiple game modes. So there's the cooperative, the team play, the solo. What was it like developing those, and which came first?
So I think kind of the main way I like to play is definitely the cooperative versus one player controlled zombie. But I think from the very beginning, we kind of wanted it to be really flexible. And I will say it made things very difficult to have everything in the game had to be compatible with 5 different modes of play. It's very easy to make something that's better in the cooperative mode that might not work in the competitive mode. So it meant that, a lot of cool ideas that weren't as flexible might not have been able to be used, because this is certainly our most flexible game. I mean, 5 modes of play is something very unique for us. But yeah, it was very challenging in that regard to have to, and any scenario, any player ability, any zombie ability had to be flexible for every mode of play, or adaptable for every mode of play. And that was a different line of thinking than we've had in any other Tiny Epic game so far. So it was a very unique challenge.
Michael, is that something that you kind of wanted as the producer of the game, where it's like, maybe like the idea came up early and you kind of like, whoa, okay, we have to have this, and Scott's like, no, don't make me. No, I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating over here, just having a little bit of fun. But is that something from a producer perspective that you got really excited about?
No, not the 5 play modes. Well, let me step back and say that yes, I got very excited about it, but no, it was not a request from me to Scott. My request was, I said, Scott, give me a zombies game and make sure that ITEMeeples are in it and make sure that it's awesome and make sure that it's simple, because I want to take a step back towards the level of simplicity that Tiny Epic Galaxies is at. And then I said, just run with it from there. And all the rest of the 5 play modes and how it unfolds and just really the brilliance of how it all came together, that's all Scott.
You mean I didn't have to do 5 game modes? Now you tell me?
Yeah, well,
Oh, man.
hey, you're an overachiever, and I'm thankful for that, but that's your problem.
Oh, I could have got months of my life
It's your
back.
problem and my blessing.
Yeah, you could have made a 1 versus all game and just chucked everything else, man. Work smarter, not harder. Well, we're very thankful, especially those of us who like co-op play and solo play, that you were able to put that in there. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I think that's pretty much covered. Let's move on. So you mentioned a couple of things. Again, I'm loving your answers because like you when you answer, Michael, you give me like you lead into the next 3 things, which is amazing. So one of the things you said when you made the request for the game is zombies. So I'm gonna go back to Reddit, and this is user Jimmy Hudson. He asks, with so many zombie games out there, were you nervous at all about putting another one into the market?
Well, to that regard, there's not really been a lot of zombie games lately. Now, there are a lot on the market, and there was a lot that came out a couple years ago, but it's really been a little while since we've seen a kind of a big zombies game come out, and notable zombies game. So I didn't feel like it didn't feel like we were going to be entering a flooded market. Now we've gotten a little bit of pushback on the theme, but I mean, who are we kidding? Zombies are they're an evergreen kind of a theme where there's just so many people that love zombies, where when I was thinking about it, I'm like, okay, so we've got these fantasy games and these space games, and I'm trying to think about just, some of my, for lack of a better word, I'll call them my mundane friends, that just people that don't play board games necessarily. They're not as deep into the hobby as myself. And, let's say like my dad, for instance, okay, super business guy, doesn't do anything with board games, right? It's going to be a stretch for him to try and imagine himself in a fantasy theme, because he's going to have to think up the dragon and the spells and the castles and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Same kind of thing with like sci-fi. It's a bit of a stretch. But zombies, it's really nothing. You just look out your front door and pretend that everybody that you see is dead walking around, right? Like you don't have to change the setting. You don't have to, anywhere you go, whether you're at the car dealership or the mall or wherever, right? You can imagine this if it were a zombie infested area. So it's got a wide reach in that way, that there's a lot of people that enjoy the zombie theme that really are not geeks. And so that was appealing to me. I wanted to do something that was a little less niche in theme than the previous Tiny Epic games, but yet still thematic. I'm not quite ready for Tiny Epic City, though. That's not entirely out of the realm of things. We're definitely going to probably get there in the future, but I wanted something that was still very thematically rich, but a little bit more broad. And why not zombies? Zombies are awesome, and it's, we're going to do zombies eventually, so why not now?
Why not? Cool. So from a design perspective, I think that zombies present something of an interesting challenge in 2 respects. More respects anyway, but we only have so much time. I guess the first one that leaps out is that zombies, like, they're boring, in a sense of like animating them. Like as in a game perspective, like a zombie is not going to like hop off of walls and plan. And they're just going to like walk in a straight line and try to eat your brain. So, what was it like, Scott, designing, and animating these zombies and making them like more interesting?
Yeah.
So what was your take on that?
I'm definitely a little bit more of the George Romero zombies, where they're a little bit shambling. But one unique thing about this game is that you could have a player-controlled zombie or a game-controlled zombie. And the game-controlled zombie, it's a very just tons of zombies are filling up the board and slowly like suffocating the players. That's kind of the feel I wanted to have, that everything was kind of closing in around them. And that's a good feel from like a zombie movie or other zombie media that I wanted to get with those. But one of the challenges actually was having a player-controlled zombie being interesting because, zombies are brainless. They want brains. Yeah. They don't have any brains themselves. So, exactly. So having the zombie player be very compelling was actually the hardest challenge, I would say, about the zombie side. And we ended up doing that by, controlling the horde. You're not necessarily driving an individual zombie around that's, as you said, running up a wall or setting a trap. You're opening up a door that has a flood of zombies coming through this side that really, cuts off the players or overruns them. And you're kind of powered with these extra special actions that are actually variable every game. One neat thing about this game is that every human character can be flipped over for the zombie side, which has a unique set of zombie actions that let you do cool things with your horde of zombies that you're managing. So I would say, as far as like the zombie player feel, and to make it compelling, it feels like you're kind of controlling this giant horde of zombies as opposed to an individual super zombie walking around. It's definitely this giant kind of claustrophobic to the characters horde that's suffocating and, pinching them in from all directions.
So it's almost like terrain. Like, blocking terrain where you open up a door and you literally can't get in. Your objective's over there, you can see it, but there's a giant horde of zombies in the way, so you have to kind of like walk around them. So in a way, the zombies kind of create obstacles for the players to react, and that's where the interest comes in for the player on the player side anyway. So like, reacting to all this, like what you were saying before, like the claustrophobia and the bottlenecking and all that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, you have to decide whether you want to go through them or around them, and both have their risks.
There you go. Awesome. So the other thing, and this kind of hits towards a more macro level design perspective, and this is something I got off the pages of BGG people were discussing on there, was that you can go many ways. Like this is a very tactical game. You can go many ways with tactics. Like you can get really involved with tactics. Like you can involve line of sight, you can involve cornering, you can involve, targeting and all this other stuff. You kind of, it's a Tiny Epic game. So we talked about in the jump about they're simple and they should be simple. So maybe kind of talk a little bit through resolving that tension where maybe a gamer might expect in a quote unquote tactics game a little bit more meat on the bone, so to speak, while trying to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly kind of you want to hit the in between. You don't want it to be so abstract that it doesn't feel like you're moving around the mall, because it is a very tactical game. You're moving room to room trying to kill your zombies as you go, but we certainly don't want it to feel like you're not that character or you're not in the mall yourself. So hitting that balance was, a little tricky. One nice thing we have is, since we have both like melee weapon and ranged weapons, and we are able to move those into what zombies you can hit. I mean, we make it very simple. If you're in the same space, use a melee weapon. If you're in an adjacent space, use a ranged weapon. But we find after playing, like, just those little discrepancies as kind of you're walking around, and those little choices of, do I want to use a melee weapon here? Do I want to use a ranged weapon? Do I want to move around these zombies? That's enough to give you a tactical experience without bogging players down in line of sight or like exhaustion points or anything like that. It's just enough to make you feel like you're moving your character around the wall without giving you a half hour worth of rules.
Mm-hmm. Cool. The other thing I wanted to get back to when Michael was talking about some of the stuff was the ITEMeeples. So he said, give me a game with ITEMeeples. I imagine that there are a lot of games in the hopper with ITEMeeples. They've been, talk a little bit about how ITEMeeples have kind of like taken off for you and how you approach them, how you think about them, and what you plan on doing with them.
ITEMeeples It's our favorite new toy. We have a lot of fun designing around them and including them in the games. That's not to say it's going to be in every single one of the titles, but we definitely have some stuff in the works that I'm not going to announce quite yet that take ITEMeeples to the next level again. I mean, that's something that every time we've been coming back to a new title with ITEMeeples, we want to do something that kind of brings it up to the next notch. And with Tiny Epic Defenders and Tiny Epic Defenders the Dark War, we introduced back items that fit into the 2 peg holes on the back of the ITEMeeple. In Tiny Epic Zombies, we have vehicles that you can put them in and they can carry their items, so you can be driving in a cop car with your chainsaw out the window as you're trying to mow these zombies over. So that's something that we're going to continue to innovate with and just do more and more with ITEMeeples. And the next one that we have kind of in the works right now is going to do something with ITEMeeples that I think nobody is going to see coming. Typically a Tiny Epic game spends about 1.5 to 2 years in development. So we definitely have some stuff kind of behind the curtain that we're not going to expose quite yet, but it's very exciting, I'll tell you that. And I think it gives Scott quite a bit to work with in terms of coming up with fun ways to give characters abilities and not have to track it on your card because you can see it right on your meeple in the game. But I'll let Scott talk a little bit more about how much fun he's had designing with ITEMeeples. But they've been incredibly received incredibly well. I know that a lot of people, when they see, when they saw Tiny Epic Defenders with the ITEMeeples or when they saw Tiny Epic Zombies go up with ITEMeeples, a lot of their comments are Tiny Epic, ITEMeeples, Scott Almes, no brainer, right? Like check, backing it. So I know that ITEMeeples are definitely a critical part of kind of this growing success of the newer Tiny Epic games.
Mm-hmm. So, Scott, I wanted to fold this into a question by Reddit user Ceramic Cow with respect to the ITEMeeples and I guess the Tiny Epic, the small box and the small components. Do you ever feel like the reduced component size and all this other stuff that's involved ever kind of prevents you from really achieving your design goals, that you have to kind of change your goals a little bit? Or are you able to kind of work within that and achieve whatever you intend?
Actually, having the constraint of that box size is, I think, more beneficial because it drives me to get that, big box experience into, our price point, our, table size, our box size, and it doesn't stop me from thinking big, certainly. And I mean, I would say if you point at these ITEMeeples, it also doesn't stop Michael from putting in components that should be in a $50 game into one of our Tiny Epic games. I mean, it's if you go around your game store and you find a small box game, no one's going to have as cool components as our ITEMeeples or some of the other stuff that we get in the box. I mean, it's an incredible value. So, it's pretty darn rare that I have to push back on an idea just because I don't think I can get it into the box size, because we find a way to make it happen, and that's kind of the challenge of the Tiny Epic series. A little bit ago, of course, we were able to blow the lid off everything and do Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, where we had no constraints anywhere. But for the Tiny Epic series,
much to the chagrin of Michael.
But yeah, I mean, for the Tiny Epic series, it's a good challenge because we do start big with big ideas and what we want as far as a concept, and we just work to get it as smaller, into that box size. And so far, we found a way to do it every time.
Cool. So this is actually a little bit of a niggle. I've heard it come up on multiple threads, so I just kind of wanted to ask. The walking through walls thing. So when you're moving around the board, you don't like I think the expectation is that you look for the doors that are rooms that are connected with doorways. You can move through there, but you can actually walk through the walls, and I think you're supposed to think of them as like rubble, and you can get through it. Everything. I think that's messing with some people's heads. So I don't know if you have seen that comment or if you have any response to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say the doors are for zombies, and yeah, I mean that's thematically they're in rubble, but it's I don't. If you actually sit down and play the game, it's not really an issue.
So people need to just play and not just look at something for 5 minutes and judge.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that has come up as many times as it has, because that was like the last thing that I thought would be confusing to people. I mean, it's just like Scott said, once they get playing the game, it'll just go right away. Like it'll be gone immediately. You'll be like, oh, I'm going to sit down and play this game, and then I'm going to figure out how ridiculous this walking through walls thing is, and then you'll get playing and you'll forget that you were even going to think about that, because it's so easy once you actually put your hands on the pieces and just start moving them. It's not a problem at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also the idea that, so we haven't talked too much about mechanisms. Again, this is more a question of, this podcast is more just to kind of talk about it on a conceptual level and answer some particular questions. I'm going to leave the particular game description to some of the more visual content creators. But along the lines of the walking through walls, I think people are also reacting to the fact that like the first thing that you do on every turn has to be to move. And so I think I kind of get that you wanted to create that sense of flow, that sense of, oh my God, you're always on the run. You can't stay in the same place at the same time. But at the same time, maybe a person is where they want to be and they have to run or they have to move or anything like that. I don't know if you got that pushback as well.
I mean, I think it's one of the things as soon as you start playing, it makes perfect sense, because there's not really too many opportunities that you start the turn where you want to be. Because if you're going for something, you've rather already collected it in that space, or or you're basically trying to get somewhere every turn. I mean, you're rather running away from zombies or trying to complete one of your objectives or building your barricade up. You want to move. You're trying to get your player to places to get your objectives. So it's very rare that you just kind of want to stay in the same place, and it's not really beneficial for your character, because if you just stay there, you're going to get run over by zombies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So were there any other things that came up in like comments or in your adventures through the different places where there's talk about Tiny Epic Zombies that maybe, now that you have the forum, kind of talk a little bit about maybe some misconceptions or some ideas that people have had, or just general comments that have elicited a reaction from you guys?
One thing that's kind of come up in some of the comments is people, kind of responding to some of our stretch goals, and just, because in our stretch goals we have quite a bit of new characters that are unlocked and some new items and stuff that are unlocked. And we also unlocked a lot of upgrades to the components and also to the scenarios. So, one thing's like, oh, no more characters. We have too many characters. It doesn't really add replayability to the game. But it does, because you have to think each character on the flip side is a zombie character. And the zombie character has several abilities. And then the human character has an ability. And so really when we introduce a new character to the game, we're introducing new content for the people playing as the survivors, and new content both for the AI zombie and for players who are going to, or for the player that's going to control the zombies. And so there's a few layers of content that gets added when we add a new character to the game. Plus, it's great to have a nice selection to choose from, of the players when you're playing. So it really, it may at face value, it seems to some it didn't come off as that valuable for replayability, but I promise it is, and it goes a long way. And same with the search cards, because you seed out this search deck, you build the search deck initially with a certain amount of preset cards, and then you put into it from another set of cards, and then what's remaining sits out as kind of a supply deck because in the game you can bring supply crates to the courtyard and try to like stack them up and build up this barricade to ward off the zombies or keep the zombies out. But inside those crates are items, and you pull from that supply deck as well. So by adding to the items and stuff, not only are you getting another awesome item for your item meeple, which just in and of itself is fantastic, but you're also going to be changing the variability of things that you're going to be drawing when you're searching rooms and things you're going to be getting when you're pulling from the supply deck. So that also hits in multiple areas. So I guess at the end of the day, I just have to say, people just trust us. We love this game. We've spent a lot of time with this game. We're not going to deliver to you something that falls flat or is boring. We're all very serious gamers, and this is wildly entertaining to us. So just trust us. We're doing what we feel is best for the game, and we're going to deliver a game that is top-notch, and you got my word on that.
I would say one of the big misconceptions was probably the character cards being both human and zombie side, and having unique zombies really changed the game overall, because there's not only a passive ability that changes the effect of every zombie on the board, but there's also actions for that zombie player if it's human controlled, and the more zombies or more humans that die, they get flipped over to the zombie side, which just compounds passive abilities and really makes a unique challenge for the players every time. In many ways, they can be just as game-changing as the scenarios themselves. So there's a lot that goes into a single character card that comes on. But yeah, I mean, it's I would probably say that's the biggest thing. I mean, we certainly love hearing everyone's comments in the forums, and everyone's excited. Everyone's suggesting new characters. Everyone's suggesting new items, and new expansions and stretch goals for sure. I think some people in the forum are going to be kind of happy with one of the things we're working on, but we unfortunately can't use all the ideas. Some of them don't make sense for one reason or another, but overall, it's very excited to see people that excited that they're actually taking the time to think about their own ways to improve the game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this box is so full right now. If we add many more stretch goals, it's going to also have to come with a rubber band to keep the box closed. Like, we want these to fit nicely on your shelf. I'm a little OCD myself. I want to have it all look really nice and orderly. So there's only so much that we can put in here. But the stuff we have already released, and then a little bit more that is still yet to be announced, I think is very exciting. And when the game comes out, you'll be like, okay, thanks, Gamelin Games, for doing what you did. All right, it makes sense now why you did what you did, and you're right. You guys knew what you were doing with your game.
Oh, awesome. So that's all my questions. I really hope that the people who are listening got the questions answered, got a better sense of of the overall kind of meta of the game, what Scott was trying to do, what how he brought Michael's intention alive, some of the particulars that came out, and all the questions that you would need in order to determine whether you want to back or not. So, once again, thank you guys so much. It is always so much fun to talk to you guys. Michael, I know that you have 3 or 4 other interviews that you have to go to, so let me not keep you and Scott also.
Hey, thanks for having me on, and it's always fun to be able to pair up with Scott and kind of double team the interview. That's always a lot of fun. So I just appreciate the chance to be able to come on and share kind of what we're working on right now.
Well, you guys are always welcome for whatever project you have coming down in the future. So thank you to Michael and to Scott as well.
Oh, yeah, we definitely appreciate you taking the time.
And that's going to go ahead and do it for another episode of Every Night is Game Night preview series. So since this is our first episode on the Dice Tower, we wanted to put something out there that really showed what we're doing with this preview series. Like I said, we'll get to the regular episodes on Friday. You'll hear all about that. But with the preview series in particular, it's time to let the designers really speak for their games. I hope that their passion comes out. I hope that I'm able to bring the questions, the knowledge, the interesting interview that would kind of light up a game more than just, what you see on the page, because it's kind of its best foot forward. I'd really try hard to get into the muck of the game, so to speak, and, really answer your questions and figure out if games are worth a back or not. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, or even suggestions for different Kickstarter projects that you would like to hear more about, please hit us up. We are always available at ENGN_podcast on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook and BoardGamersAnonymous.com, which is the sister podcast to Every Night is Game Night. You can also find our podcast there. If you like what you heard, I invite you to visit us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and give us a rating. It really helps with the visibility of the podcast, 5 stars or however many stars you think we deserve. So go ahead and give us a rating. Go ahead and hit us up and let's get talking. Really excited to be on the Dice Tower. Looking forward to bringing you as much good content as we possibly can. So this is Jason signing off. Later, everybody.